A woman meets her perfect match online, only to discover on their first date that he's been stalking her for weeks, gathering intimate details about her life without her knowing. When he reveals his true identity, she's forced to escape, leaving her shaken and haunted by the thought of how much he might still know about her.
Alright, so I'll never forget the night I thought I was going on a casual date, and it turned into something straight out of a nightmare. And before you ask, no, this isn't one of those over-the-top, crazy ghost stories. This is real. It happened to me, and it could happen to anyone. I'd been chatting with this guy, Matt, for a few weeks. We met on a dating app. You know how it goes. He seemed super nice, the flirty, laid-back type. Our conversations were fun, and he wasn't pushy, which was a refreshing change. We'd text about work, hobbies, random stuff. He liked hiking, said he was really into cooking, and even sent me pictures of these gourmet meals he claimed to make. He seemed, well, normal. Nothing about him gave me any reason to worry. After a few weeks of back-and-forth messages and a couple of video calls, we decided to meet up in person. He offered to cook dinner at his place, and since he seemed trustworthy, I thought, why not? It wasn't like he was some random stranger anymore. We'd been chatting enough that I felt comfortable. Besides, he lived in a pretty nice neighborhood, so what could go wrong? That was my first mistake. I got to his apartment around 7 p.m. It was one of those old brick buildings, the kind that feels cozy and charming from the outside. He buzzed me in, and when I walked into his apartment, it looked exactly like I expected. Clean, minimal, with a few plants and art on the walls. He had candles lit, some soft music playing in the background, and the smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen. Honestly, I felt lucky. It was all so perfect. We sat down, had some wine, and started chatting. It was just as easy and fun as it had been over text. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. Dinner was great too. He made this elaborate pasta dish, and we joked about how I couldn't cook to save my life. Everything felt normal, comfortable. But then, things started to shift. After dinner, I noticed that all the doors in his apartment were closed. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he just liked his space tidy. But when I got up to use the bathroom, I realized they weren't just closed, they were locked. The bathroom door, the bedroom door, even the hallway closet, all of them, locked from the inside. I thought that was strange, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was just a neat freak who didn't want me poking around his stuff. When I came back from the bathroom, I noticed my purse wasn't where I'd left it. It had been sitting on the couch, but now it was on the kitchen counter, open. My phone was gone. I froze. I tried not to panic, but I could feel my heart racing. I casually walked over to the kitchen, pretending like I didn't notice anything weird, and asked him if he'd seen my phone. He just smiled and said, "Oh, I moved your bag. Thought it'd be more comfortable over here." He didn't mention the phone. I wasn't sure what to say. Something about his tone was different now, less friendly, more controlling. The whole vibe had shifted. Suddenly I felt trapped, like I wasn't in control of the situation anymore. I tried to keep my cool. I figured maybe I just left my phone somewhere else, no big deal, right? So, I asked if he could help me look for it. His face changed. It was subtle, but I caught it. His smile faded just a bit, and there was this coldness in his eyes. "I'm sure it'll turn up," he said, but he didn't move. He just sat there watching me. I felt sick. My stomach was in knots, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. Something wasn't right. I needed to get out of there, and fast. I told him I wasn't feeling well and that I should probably head home. But as I stood up, he got up too, moving towards one of the locked doors, the one that led to what I assumed was a basement or storage area. "You sure you want to leave so soon?" he asked, leaning against the door, blocking my view. His voice was calm, too calm, but there was something in his posture that felt threatening. "We could hang out a little longer. I've got more wine." I tried to smile to play it cool, but my hands were shaking. "Yeah, I'm not feeling great. I think I should go." He didn't move. "Why don't you stay? I was really looking forward to tonight." At this point, my fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, and all I wanted was to get the hell out of there. I grabbed my purse and started walking toward the door. I wasn't even sure if I had my phone. I didn't care. I just needed to leave. He followed me, slow and deliberate. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. As I reached for the doorknob, I prayed it wasn't locked too. Thankfully, it wasn't. I yanked the door open and stepped out into the hallway, barely able to breathe. "Hey," he called after me, his voice suddenly sharp, no longer playful or friendly. "You forgot something." I didn't look back. I didn't care what I'd left. I ran down the hallway, out of the building, and didn't stop until I was in my car, locking the doors behind me. It wasn't until I got home that I realized what he meant. My phone was still missing. I never found out what happened to it. I blocked him on the app, deleted everything, and spent the next few nights sleeping with the lights on. A few weeks later, I saw a post online about a woman who had gone missing after a date in the same part of town. I didn't catch all the details, but it made me wonder, what would have happened if I'd stayed? If I hadn't trusted my gut and gotten out when I did? That was the last time I ever went to someone's place on a first date. Hell, I haven't even used a dating app since. You never really know who you're meeting, and sometimes what seems like a casual night in can turn into a real-life nightmare.
A woman meets a seemingly perfect guy on a dating app, and their first date at his apartment starts off great until she notices locked doors, her missing phone, and a sudden change in his demeanor. As she tries to leave, he blocks her path, his friendliness gone. She barely escapes shaken and later hears of a missing woman from the same area, realizing just how close she came to a nightmare.
Alright, let me tell you about the time I thought I met the perfect guy, and how it turned into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. This is a story I wouldn't wish on anyone. It started like so many other dating stories these days, online. I'd been using this popular dating app for a few months. Nothing too serious, just casual conversations here and there. You know, swiping left and right while you're binge-watching Netflix, seeing if anyone piques your interest. That's when I matched with Daniel. He seemed perfect, handsome, funny, witty, the kind of guy who always had the right thing to say, you know? I mean, our chats were flirty right from the start, but he wasn't over the top or pushy. He was just smooth. It was all pretty typical at first. He asked about my job, my favorite hobbies, places I like to hang out. Stuff you'd expect. I told him I liked hiking, exploring new coffee shops, even shared a few pics from my favorite spots in the city. Nothing too personal, but enough to keep the conversation going. I found myself checking my phone constantly, waiting for his next message. It's crazy how quickly you can get sucked into these online connections, right? Anyway, after about 3 weeks of chatting, we finally decided to meet. I was nervous, excited, all the usual feelings before a first date. We'd decided on this cute little cafe downtown, one I'd been to before, so it felt safe. I got there a little early, ordered a coffee, and grabbed a table near the window so I could see him when he walked in. Now here's where things started to feel off. 15 minutes go by, then 20. No big deal, people run late, right? I texted him to check if everything was okay. No response. I figured maybe he was driving or stuck in traffic. But then, as I'm sitting there, I noticed this guy at a table across from me. He's alone, just sitting there watching me. I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe he was waiting for someone too. But then I started to get that weird feeling in my gut. You know, that instinct that tells you something's not quite right? Another 10 minutes go by. Still no sign of Daniel. I text again. Nothing. And all the while, this guy across from me is just staring. Like, not even pretending to look away when I caught his eye. At this point, I was getting seriously uncomfortable. I started thinking about leaving, but part of me still wanted to wait. Maybe Daniel really was just running late. Then the guy stands up and walks over to my table. My heart was racing, but I tried to stay calm. He sits down, uninvited, and gives me this weird smile. I didn't say anything at first. I was too shocked. "Hey, Emma," he says, real casual, like we're old friends. My stomach dropped. "I'm Daniel." I froze. This wasn't the guy I'd been talking to for weeks, not even close. The pictures he'd sent, the charming texts, none of it matched the person sitting in front of me. He was older, for one thing, and there was just this vibe, like something was seriously wrong. I don't understand," I stammered. "You're not Daniel." He just smiled again, this creepy, smug smile. "Oh, I'm Daniel, all right. You just didn't expect to meet the real me." That's when it hit me. I'd been catfished. All those conversations, all those little details I shared with this guy, it was all a lie. But what scared me the most wasn't the fact that he'd pretended to be someone else. It was how much he knew about me. He started bringing up things I'd never told him. My exact address, the coffee shop I visit every Saturday, even where I went hiking last weekend. "How do you know all this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned in closer, way too close for comfort. "I've been watching you for a while, Emma, before we even matched." My heart was pounding in my chest. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was panicking. This wasn't just some random catfish situation. This guy had been stalking me, and now, here he was, sitting right in front of me, like it was no big deal. "I need to go," I said, grabbing my bag, trying to make a quick exit. But he reached out and grabbed my wrist, holding me in place. His grip was tight, too tight. "Not yet," he said, his voice low and menacing. "We're just getting started." I yanked my arm free and bolted for the door. I didn't care about making a scene. I just needed to get out of there. As soon as I hit the sidewalk, I started running, my heart racing faster than I ever thought possible. I didn't stop until I was far enough away to feel like he wasn't following me. When I got home, I locked all the doors, closed the blinds, and just sat there, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. The real one? I don't know. I didn't open it. I deleted the app, blocked every number I could find, and spent the next few weeks constantly looking over my shoulder. I still think about that night, about how easy it was for him to manipulate me, how he gathered all those little details about my life without me even realizing it. I can't even begin to describe the feeling of knowing someone's been watching you, tracking your every move. And the worst part? I don't know how much of my life he already knew, or how long he'd been planning it. That was the last time I used a dating app. The thought of it still makes my skin crawl. You never really know who's on the other side of that screen, and sometimes the person you're chatting with isn't who they say they are.